Bienvenue au Canada. Welcome to Canada. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the ICANN board, I want to welcome you to Toronto for ICANN's 45th International Public Meeting. When the world thinks of Canada, many things come to mind: peacekeeping, economic and political stability, hockey, well, when the NHL isn't on strike anyway. But gathered here this week, I'm certain there's something else that the world could easily think of when thoughts turn to Canada, which is communications. The ability to communicate, to harness technology, and defeat distance has been a defining drive for this nation. The nickname the Great White North is bound in the reality of the vast distances in Canada. This nation is the second largest on Earth geographically, but only the 36th largest in population. And through every step of its history, Canada and Canadians have labored to collapse distance and bind Canadians together. The fur trade, the transcontinental railway, and telecommunications have all done this. And this has driven Canada to a number of firsts. Anik, the first national domestic satellite, launched in 1972, and its successors are still in space. Archie, the first search engine, was developed at McGill University, Montreal. Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, first public broadcaster to go on the internet with the Gopher site back in 1993. And Toronto has another link, this one of ideas rather than technology. Just up the road at the University of Toronto, one of the professors published a work that described the great project we're gathered here to discuss. That 1962 book didn't talk about what we're going to be talking about, new GTLDs, DNSSEC, or internet governance. But what it did was examine the idea of the next medium, the next communications technology, and how it would connect people around the world. 30 years before the commercial internet began to spread, Marshall McLuhan's The Gutenberg Galaxy described the global village, a world connected by communications technology. And it's that technology that we've been working on for the past decades, and we'll talk about this coming week. I want to thank several people. I want to thank our hosts from Industry Canada and CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registry, with particular appreciation to Minister Tony Clement, Assistant Deputy Minister Martha Morgan, Heather Dryden, and CIRA's leader Byron Holland. I also want to thank the many senior government officials from all over the world who are here today for the first high-level meeting ever held in conjunction with an ICANN meeting. This is a big accomplishment both for the Governmental Advisory Committee and our hosts. These meetings require an enormous amount of work that goes on behind the scenes, and in the usual words of diplomacy, it's already a success, and we are looking forward to a great success. I want to take a moment in a slightly different direction for something that has affected all of us, has a bit of a personal connection, and has a somewhat surprisingly pleasant Canadian connection. 14 years ago tomorrow, on October 16th, 1998, we lost John Postel, a very special pioneer. And I'm looking to see if his picture is up. There it is. Here he's shown getting the Silver Award from the ITU. He was a major contributor from the very start, part of the team at UCLA that put the first node on the ARPANET. He worked tirelessly for many years, contributing to the architecture of the internet, helping to create the domain name system, and evolving the function that became known as IANN. This award that he's receiving in this picture was in July of 1998, very shortly before his untimely death. And when he was, during this period, was exactly the period that ICANN was being formed. John worked tirelessly and vigorously to help bring ICANN into existence, and was scheduled to be the first Chief Technology Officer as part of the founding team. Let me ask for another picture to be put up. There we go. This is a hokey concocted picture that was shot as part of a piece that Newsweek did to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the ARPANET. This picture was in July 1994, 4 years before John passed away. And we were all at a meeting. That's Vint Cerf on the right, that's me in the background, and John Postel over on the left. Many people have commented that this network cannot work. Although I see, looking at it fresh for the first time in several years, that there is a thematic element that I want to stress, which is exactly what you'd hope for. Your chairman is listening. I'm not doing any talking. This picture was shot while we were at a IETF meeting up the street at the Sheraton, walking distance from here. Spent a very long day concocting all of that, stringing vegetables on strings and trying to figure out that shot. And it's still vivid in my memory. That was a Thursday. Friday I got on a plane, went to Massachusetts. Saturday, I got a phone call from the Newsweek editor to iron out a quote. I was carrying a newfangled device called a cell phone and was walking down the street with my daughter, and I answered the phone, and she was so embarrassed that I would be seen with a telephone in my ear walking down the street. She cannot walk down the street these days without a phone in her ear. That was an exciting period back then when we started things up. Our offices were small cubicles in a big room. We had blank sheets of paper to try to sketch out protocols. We organized informal meetings of a network working group. We wrote informal memos that we called requests for comments. We thought all of this was extremely temporary. But had no real clue that we were laying down the foundations for today's Internet Engineering Task Force and later the foundation for ICANN. Aside from my job of welcoming you today, the other key thing I have to do is tell you how happy we are with the arrival of Fadi Shahadi in the role of president and CEO. We worked the board worked very hard over the past year in a search process, and equally hard in the less visible but nonetheless quite vigorous transition process. Fadi outdid himself in what I know was a very high stress period for him. Things were going quite well for him in the job that he had, and it took quite a bit of work to extricate himself from that. And he advertised that it would take him until the beginning of this month. He was able to accelerate that, but far more impressive to those of us who were watching closely is that in that time when he said he might have a little bit of time to pay attention to ICANN while he was in transition, he studied very hard, studied deeply, spent quite a bit more time than he advertised, and immediately grabbed hold of several of the hard problems. And so when he started, he was on that very day, on that very morning, able to introduce a couple of very important key hires who you'll hear about, a bit of reorganization and attention to some of the long-standing technical and other kinds of problems that had been needing attention. And he's brought an extremely strong focus on internal organization and on execution. And things which we've already seen from him, and for those of you who were in Prague have firsthand experience. He listens, he engages, he responds, and he exudes a tremendous amount of comfort, not only on his own part, but in causing others to feel comfortable. He's an enabler, and he is just an incredible human being. You will be thrilled shortly to hear a considerable amount from him, and I don't want to make him nervous here, but I'm glad I'm speaking first. He's a hard act to follow. Let me just take care of a tiny bit of business about the board of directors itself. We are 21 people. including the non-voting liaisons and the CEO. We have been working to gradually improve our efficiency and coordination. It is a series of relatively small things as opposed to some grand set of changes, and it's basically working. We're tightening up on our board meetings. We're planning workload for the year. Some of the things that we're trying have been what I'll call imperfect experiments. We tried to schedule telephone board calls on demand instead of on a predetermined schedule. Why would we do that? We are composed as in accordance with our bylaws from people all over the world. That means that if you're going to have a telephonic board meeting, it's going to be 3 a.m. for somebody. In the past, our board meetings have cranked on 2 hours scheduled, 3 hours in practice, and have been quite onerous. I wanted to shorten our calls, and I also wanted to eliminate them if possible. And where there was business that needed to be passed through the board, there are certain requirements having to do with thresholds on spending or on other kinds of actions, that we would schedule them on demand. Nice idea, didn't work very well. I had not realized the consequences of everybody having previously tried to gear their schedule to when the next board meeting is instead of us scheduling a board meeting as to when it was needed. So we're going to go back on a predetermined schedule. Another thing that I've been very focused on is trying to move ordinary business behind the scenes, get it done. The board meetings themselves are not intended to be primary activities that determine policy. They're not supposed to be the primary activity where subject matters are delved into. We're charged with overseeing the process, making sure that all the pieces have come together and are proper. But I will say we overdid it a bit. In Prague, we passed the COM and renewal for the .com registry, and we passed the budget. And we did that on Saturday when we were meeting in sort of workshop mode, and received substantial complaints about why did we do that privately instead of in public. And so I'm here to say that I apologize. We set the threshold in the wrong place. We won't do that anymore. Nonetheless, having said that, and being totally committed to putting these kinds of decisions in view where you can see them happen, I want to set your expectations properly. This is, as I said, board meetings are not going to be the place where you see new issues brought up, where you see major debates. There may well be differences of opinion among board members. We will give absolutely open voice to board members to speak their minds, put on the record any opinions, but the formation of those opinions and the debates back and forth have to take place in a more orderly way, in a more timely way, over a period of time through public comment, through open sessions during the meetings, and through the policy development processes, of course, through the supporting organizations and with advice from the advisory committees. So by the time a resolution comes to the board, the real work is all done. As I said, we'll put the high-touch, highly visible decisions in front, and you'll see them. But as I say, the expectations should be set that what you're seeing is the end result of a long process, not a primary process in its own. We also are deeply committed to keeping track of what we've heard from you. The board spends its week listening, meeting with constituency groups, going to various sessions. And we started a practice last time of trying to record what we've heard and then tell you what we've heard and tell you what we plan to do about it. And that's to be followed with the expected follow-through on a sequence like that. We come back the next time and we not only tell you what we heard the last time, what we plan to do since the last time, but what we actually did do about that. So this time we're doing the full cycle. I'm not sure it's perfect. We'll tune it. But Thursday afternoon, at the beginning of the public forum, we will document. We already have published what we said we were going to do and what we actually did, but we'll present that and, in addition, tell you what we've heard this week so far and what we plan to do about it. There is more to that second part, because we will still be in listening mode even after we have told you what we've heard, because the public forum will just be beginning at that point, and we will publish shortly after this meeting the package of, as I say, what we've heard and what we plan to do about it. We are eager for feedback on that process. The whole point of it is to improve communication, and so we expect that kind of communication. Let me cover two other things, and then you will be pretty much done with me. We take the reviews required by the affirmation of commitments very seriously. We're in the late stages of implementing the 27 recommendations from the Accountability and Transparency Review. And we've also received reports from the next two reviews for WHOIS and for Security, Stability, and Resiliency. We're now examining these reports carefully. The process is not as visible as I would like it to be, so let me tell you just a bit about it. One of the things we do after we receive these reports is we ask the staff for an assessment, an objective assessment of feasibility, cost, and where the implementation would take place, who would be responsible for it. If we accept a recommendation, we want to know for sure how it's going to get done. We also want to reach out to the relevant parties to understand what the impact is going to be, and to the relevant subject matter experts to tell us what we need to know before we go forward with the decision. We give great weight, as we should, to the recommendations in the report. We don't treat them as casual or just advice from another party. And we also look very seriously at how to move forward. We'll say more about this formally during the public board meeting on Thursday. And over time, I expect to document the full cycle of what the review processes are, not just the very heavy work that's done by the review committees themselves. Let me take up the last matter. You have a picture of you on the screen there of one of our ombudsmen, Chris Lahat, and we have another picture of Herb Way, our adjunct ombudsman. They're available in Dockside 4 all week. Fadi will mention them again. My purpose here is to emphasize something that we've discovered in reviewing the process, which is nobody has used the ombudsman to complain about the board. They use other methods to complain about the board. We get plenty of complaints, all right. But I wanted to highlight that among the various methods that are available for communicating, the ombudsman process is open-ended, available for all purposes, and in some ways more flexible than asking for a reconsideration motion, which has very narrow parameters. So give it a try.